about Powell & Company. In fact, we're going to start off with one right now from Frank. He emails actually his question that says, how high will interest rates rise? You remember that old commercial with the owl and the lollipop? How many licks to the center of a Tootsie Roll? I think you get the answer to that before we get to the answer to this, although I couldn't have gotten two better people to help us with this. Really, when I say brilliant, I mean brilliant. Welcome in our two next guests, two superstars on the Federal Reserve, also economic thinking, Quill Intelligence CEO, Chief Strategist, Danielle DiMartino Booth, along with Bianco Research President, Phil Bianco. Danielle, did you hear the question?
I heard the question.
All right. You want to tell me how many licks to the center of a lollipop or answer the question?
You know, I actually think that we're going to see a three handle before this is all over, believe it or not. A lot of market participants right now are betting that Jay Powell's going to get scared and that he's going to hit the panic button and that he's going to stop. I think he really wants to the extent that he can, he wants to be as tough as Paul Volcker was on inflation. And I actually think that unlike prior midterm cycles or any political cycle, I think he's going to press forward into the midterms to not appear as if he's trying to curry favor with one party or another, which is actually not how the Federal Reserve usually operates.
Right. Phil, you've been writing, though, Jim, that you think he has no choice but to go strong, go hard on this.
Yeah, I agree with Danielle. He's got a credibility problem. They used the word transitory last year. That turned out to be terribly wrong. They have to rein in inflation. The only tool they have is to raise interest rates. Now, I agree with you that we could see 3%, maybe even the high threes within about 6 months. But on longer-term interest rates, they might be closer to peaking out. So we'll get this situation where we have short rates higher than long rates, which is an inverted yield curve, which unfortunately...
So that changes the conversation from inflation to recession.
Right,
exactly.
Because an inverted yield curve has a very good track record at predicting a recession. Yep. We're there with some of the yield curves, but we might be there with...
There's the one they like is what, the 5 and 30 or something, some odd combinations?
Three month.
Right,
yeah.
Okay.
And that should be inverted by tomorrow.
Okay, at this rate.
Next rate hike.
Well, let's get to some questions from the audience, okay? First one's sent to us by Del L. If interest rates usually have to exceed the rate of inflation, how high do you see interest rates going? And do you believe that the Fed will be able to orchestrate a soft landing? I guess no one sees it getting that high. I mean, you know, it's almost an impossibility.
It is at this juncture, and I would venture to say that any notion of a soft landing is being refuted every day by one company after another announcing layoffs, that they'd overhired, and now they're not seeing adequate demand, whether it's Walmart or AT&T or Verizon. General Electric today came and said, you know what, we've got $1 billion less in cash flow than we had expected. So I think a soft landing is kind of fantastical at this point.
But what about this, Jim? What about the notion that the markets are actually doing the work for the Fed? And the reason I say that, we got new home sales in, folks. I don't know if you were going to sell a new home or you're looking to buy one. If you're looking to buy one, it was good news. In 1 month, down $40,000. 1 month, the median price. That's kind of crazy. I mean, we knew it was exponential. We knew it would blow up like a Roman candle, but golly.
Yeah, the market's doing the work of the Fed for the Fed. That's a nice way of saying that it's making everybody miserable because it's making the economy go in reverse. The whole idea was we were never supposed to have the markets do that in the first place. But, you know, as far as interest rates go, to the original question, yeah, inflation's 9%. We don't need them to go to 9%. There is a broad belief that inflation will come down. Is it going to go all the way to 2? Probably not. But it might go to 3 or 4, which means that's where interest rates will probably settle.
Let me ask you something philosophical. People who are not necessarily in the markets, right? You're sitting at home last year, and all of a sudden, every time you open up the mailbox, you got a check. Right? It's like, okay, you took it, you cashed it, you went to the mall, right? I mean, what the hell are you going to do? That's why they sent it to you. And you're having a great time. Your neighbors are having a great time. And then you hear about a year later that the government, between the federal government and the Federal Reserve, deliberately want to hurt you, deliberately want to make your house worth less, deliberately want fewer people to have a job. Yeah. Is there something wrong with the system that does that to the American public?
Look, there was something very wrong with all of the people who were surprised at the money that they didn't necessarily need. I can't tell you how many American families were like, I feel like we should be giving money to the people who really need it. I don't need this child tax credit in cash. And then they spent it. And in many ways they did. But now we're seeing auto repossessions go up. We're seeing loads of RV repossessions. Boats will be next. Banks don't know where to put them. But the backlash is, though, that this created the inflation that is the most regressive of all taxes, because the federal government authorized the spending, and the Federal Reserve monetized every last penny of it, that's a huge no. Never monetize the national debt. They tell you that on the first day when you're inside the Federal Reserve. Trust me, I remember. And yet we did a lot of it.
Let's get some more questions. I'm going to go to Bill, who sent us a video question.
Hi, Charles. Bill Bodner from Red Bank, New Jersey. Why does the Fed talk about raising rates expeditiously when energy, food, and daily essential costs make up a bulk of that inflation, which the Fed can't fix with higher rates? And I guess a secondary question would be, is core inflation moving lower because that headline energy-based inflation remains stubbornly high? Thanks for taking my question. Have a great day.
Fantastic questions. What do you think?
Yeah, as far as the second half of the question about core inflation moving lower, there is some argument to be made that what you're trying to do with core inflation is remove energy prices, remove food prices, but you can never remove them from everything, transportation costs and everything else, that might be impacting those prices. As far as the first part of the question, the Wall Street acronym for that is, well, the Fed can't print ships, the Fed can't print oil, so what are they trying to do? I'll just point out to everybody, the U.S. has the highest inflation rate in the developed world. Well, Portugal just recently took us out, but we've got a very high inflation rate. Well, the rest of the world has a supply chain problem. The rest of the world has a Ukraine war problem. The rest of the world has high energy prices. Why are we number one? It gets back to what we were talking about a minute ago. We mailed out more money than anybody else, and that's why we have higher inflation. The Fed can do something about that. So raising rates to try and rein in that excess demand, I think, is where they're going.
Again, it's such a tough thing to know that, hey, I just did my part as an American, you know. I helped spend the money that you gave me. I thought there were no strings attached. Boy, did these strings hurt. All right, let's go to Michael in the audience with a question. Michael. Does anyone? All right, so we'll get back then. Okay, I got an email question sent to us from Brian. He says that the idea that Jay Powell can fix the economy with only monetary tools seems like a pipe dream. Remember Paul Volcker and Ronald Reagan on the fiscal side doing all he could for the business community. It's a dumbbell with monetary on one side, fiscal policy on the other. Jay Powell cannot do it with fiscal components alone. Why is there so little conversation about this? Danielle, I mean, ironically, you know, I mean, if the White House had their way, we'd be printing more money. I mean, if it wasn't for Senator Joe Manchin, if Build Back Better had gone through with the more, I don't know how much it was, I forgot the price tag, but how much exponentially would inflation be? I mean, it would be even more.
We would be staring down the barrel of double-digit inflation, and double-digit inflation that continued to rise.
Right.
And the same type of speculation that has fed people who buy homes to rent out, speculation everywhere, that would have continued and actually increased because, again, the Fed is the other hand. They're monetizing all of this. And I think that Jay Powell, and I'm rarely defend this man, you know that, Charles, but I think that Jay Powell is actually relieved right now that he's not being pressed upon to print more money, that right now fiscal policy is on hold so that he can try and get this inflation under control.
He might not be pressed to print more money, and I agree with that, but he was pressed by the president last month when he was at the Oval Office, and he pointed at him and says, the president said, the job of bringing inflation down is to the Federal Reserve. So, Jay, go make it go away. So you could argue the question was right. Does he have the tools that he can do something about it? Maybe, maybe not. But he can't say, I can't do anything about it. The president just ordered him to.
Right.
Well, yeah, but Jay cannot create a pipeline, though.
And if you're paying attention, on Sunday, Elizabeth Warren wrote an op-ed in the Journal essentially saying she's going to blame Jay Powell when everyone has to feel this pain that he's been ordered to inflict upon us.
Oh, bless
We
her
got time to
heart.
squeeze in one more. It's from Bob, who sent us this question. Which type of inflation cannot be put down by the Fed? Won't we have stagflation no matter what Powell does because we need more energy? What do you think about that? Let me start with you, Jim. Stagflation, is that still a possibility? I almost felt like we should have had bingo cards, right? It would have been inflation, deflation, disinflation, stagflation. You know, already in the show, someone would have been a bingo, would I win? $10.
Stagflation, unfortunately, is a reality. It's not even a possibility. When you've got 9% inflation now, which is the highest in 40 years, and if you believe a lot of Wall Street, and there's no reason not to at this point. Thursday's GDP will probably be the second consecutive negative quarter, and you've already got the White House trying to spin that as not being a recession.
Right.
That's stagflation. Now, the good news about stagflation, the bad news is nobody wants it. The good news is historically it doesn't last very long. Maybe a quarter or two or several months. It doesn't go
Didn't
on
it last
for
a whole
years.
decade in the 70s? Didn't it
Well,
go from 65 to 82?
It came and it went.
I hear all the
It
old
came
folks,
and-
yeah, I remember that, yeah, I was there for that. Golly, it was a hell of a time. Pushed my Volkswagen up the block. I was in a gas line for 7 days. I remember that. Come on now, Jim.
There was still job creation going on at the time. We were still creating jobs as a country. We were still growing as a country over that decade, even though it was punctuated with stagflation.
We have to leave it there. Danielle, Jim, you are two of the very best. We were lucky to have you. Thank you very much, folks. We got to give them a hand. Appreciate it. All right, so when we come back, why this crisis is only just beginning, folks. This is part of a grand experiment. It's been around for a while. Provide free money in return for that, total government control. It's a Faustian bargain that you know has failed already, but they're not going to stop. It won't go away. But we will be right back. We'll see you in a few. All right, thanks a lot, guys.